Hello world of YouTube. Before I get into today's video, I just wanted to encourage those that are for the movement to contribute in any way you can, whether it be to spread the message, donate if you can, or just protest if you're for ending police brutality and the injustices committed against the black community. Some would say this is not the platform to do that, but given my listening logs are one of my more popular segments, I figured I would take this as an opportunity to promote that, as opposed to just sticking it into a segment like a conversation where I would normally talk about subjects like this at length, but those don't necessarily garner the same attention that my music reviews do. So, again, if you support the cause, support it. If not, hello world of YouTube, and welcome to the next listening log update for May of 2020. I only got to about 10 albums over the last month because of the move and prepping for other projects and a bunch of other shit going on. Mixtape work, all that sort of stuff. So, not a whole lot on the docket. I didn't really have a whole lot of requests, but I had some stuff that friends really suggested I check out. So I did, and I'm going to be sharing my thoughts on those records now. Now, the first record I checked out is one that I was pretty excited for because I liked their last record and I didn't see it getting some hype. I'm talking about the new Boston Manor record, Glue, which sees them doubling down on some of the electronic aesthetics that were toyed with on Welcome to the Neighborhood, and is an addition to their sound that I think is great. It almost feels akin to what Code Orange were doing on their latest record, but in a much more pulled back and intensity fashion. There are intense moments on the record, like the first couple of tracks, Everything is Ordinary, and Ones and Zeros, and the closer, Monolith, having some real visceral vocal lines delivered by their vocalist Henry Cox, and I love their juxtaposition of those moments with some great hooks, like on the incredible Plasticine Dream, which is this 90s throwback song with its guitar production and its sort of synthetically driven dance almost atmosphere, and the other tracks like Playing God and Only One, which have more colossal hook work with some great bass lines paired with them. But I feel like this record is a little set back from some of its ideas. I don't hate this record, and I do like it more than Welcome to the Neighborhood. I think it's very, very solid, but I feel like it could have done with a little bit of a rearranging in the track listing, because while I love how this record has this fiery, energetic start, it kind of tapers off a lot for a majority of the runtime before that closer comes back and ignites a lot of energy back into the track listing. Not to say it's a snooze fest, because the guitars are still very beefy throughout the entire runtime, but I feel like there should have been a little more of a focus on intensity, because this record gets you really amped up. And while I like the transition from Ones and Zeros into Plasticine Dreams, it gives this great sort of tonal shift in a very gratifying sort of way. I was hoping for some energy to pick up a little more in the track listing every revisit I gave it. Like, after the run of Plasticine Dream through On a High Ledge, I was wanting something else to kind of kick me back into gear, and it just still doesn't quite get me there. I do like, again, those songs that sit in the middle of the track listing a lot. I love the opening of Playing God and how it transitions into its verses that lead to that colossal chorus very, very well. I love the bridge of You and Me at the Class War. That's sort of a moment that does reinvigorate the listener in a very kinetic sort of way. But I feel like as a whole, this record tries. It really aims for something more. It just falls a little short for me. It's crossing, it's bridging a good gap into a sound that I feel like this band could utilize really well, and I feel like the production is a lot tighter than it was on Welcome to the Neighborhood, but I just want that little step forward, that little extra step forward, for me to really feel super invested and love this band. But I do still really like this record. I think it's really solid. If you liked Welcome to the Neighborhood, or you like bands like Linkin Park, I feel like you would enjoy the digital atmospheres that are on this record, and you'll like the hooks as well. I'm giving this a 7. It is still very, very solid. It's just a shy step away from true greatness in my eyes.
Carry them hammers. I got his counselors, was talent scramblers.
On the other side of that coin, Ka dropped a new record. He's back, baby. For those who don't know who Ka is, he's a New York MC that has this gravelly delivery spat over these very sparse beats that gives his flow this very serene feel, and he's just a philosophy spitter. He's all about dole it into philosophies of the life that he's living. And every record he's done, at least that I've listened to, has had this sort of thematic theme to it. You know, Honor Killed the Samurai had this very almost Wu-Tang inspired Eastern influence to a lot of its instrumentals and its philosophies. He had that record Orpheus that had him doing this similar thing in a Greek backdrop, and the instrumentals suited that in a very grand way. And on Descendants of Cain, his newest record, he again does something very similar, but under the backdrop of Old Testament style Christianity, with lots of allusions to Cain and Abel and feeling betrayed and, you know, faith being talked about in a different sort of way. It's not necessarily Christian hip-hop, but he's talking about Christian figures in a very gangster sort of way. I love this record. I love its instrumentals. I love Ka as a rapper in general. I think he's an incredible spitter. His writing is so very profound to me, and he does a good job at doling out philosophies in his own sort of way. This record is as consistent as his other projects. I could see people being deterred from a lot of the minimal style beats, because again, they're not bangers at all. This is not something you listen to bump with your friends and really get, you know, amped while somebody's spitting viciously. It's more about cold, jabbing lines that really delve into philosophy, mindsets of actions, and all that sort of stuff. And I love that sort of thing. And I love his use of religious imagery in that aspect. I think that it's a great juxtaposition of your typical sounds you hear in hip-hop. I love this record a lot. I think that it's worth your time if you like East Coast rhymers who do something a little more raw. If you love raw rappers, if you love raw MCs, you'll enjoy Ka's style. I think that he does a great job at pulling something out of his normal style and putting it in a different atmosphere. I'm giving this an 8. It's well worth your time. It's fucking amazing. Now, my introduction to Nicolas Jaar was his Against All Logic project, which I've loved both albums that project has dropped, and I was excited to see that he dropped a new project under himself, because I know that they are vastly different from each other, and I was shocked at how well this also sounded. I knew that he was known for ambient-driven stuff, but I love the textures and atmospheres that he adds to his ambience. A lot of the ambience on here has this unnerving feeling. It's a little unsettling, and I like that he injects that with jittering vocals or just kind of really intimate feeling vocals like on Vanish or on Mud. I love how on tracks like Agosto and Goche he injects these other instruments into the mix to create their own textures amongst their own songs. I really love how on Agosto he puts this woodwind instrument. I don't know if it's an oboe or a bassoon or a clarinet, something in that realm of the woodwind family. I love how it sounds with these ambient textures, and I love the flourishments that it adds. There's a lot of texturing done in these ambient passages to give them their own characters across the span of the runtime, but I like how it all fits under this unnerving, unsettling umbrella. I am genuinely impressed by what's on display here, and I think that he has a real talent for this as well, and it actually makes me want to dive into more of his discography. And I feel like if you enjoy some of the Tim Hecker projects that I reviewed on the channel, or you're a fan of ambience with a sense of unnerving sounds to them, you'll enjoy Cenizas as a whole. I feel like at points it can get a little monotonous, it can get a little atonal, but by the by, I like the cohesion and consistency on display here. I'm giving this an 8 out of 10. I admire dedication. When Hayley Williams announced that she was doing a solo album this year, I was genuinely surprised. I loved the output she did with Paramore on After Laughter, and was curious to see if she would experiment with new sounds on a solo record. And she does on Petals for Armor, but in ways I was not expecting. A lot of people have been throwing around the Radiohead and Bjork comparisons, and I think they're definitely there, especially in the great opener Simmer, or tracks like Rotus Lotus, Violet Iris, or Taken. The production on those tracks, especially the drums, sounds very indicative of In Rainbow's era Radiohead, and tracks like Leave It Alone and Cinnamon almost see her melding those art pop ideals with almost a St. Vincent approach to vocal delivery, and I love that even more. I think that the melding of those two styles is perfectly indebted to a lot of the things that you would expect someone of any sort of artful musicianship to explore, and I think that she handles those styles very gracefully. I even like that she sort of injects some of the new wave influence that was seen on Paramore's last album, After Laughter, on tracks like Dead Horse, Over Yet, or Sugar on the Rim, which even though the production isn't as consistent on those tracks as they were on After Laughter, I still think it's interesting that she decides to inject those songs and pair them with these more art pop centric tracks that I think lend to a lot of Hayley's personality, which I feel like comes across in all spades on this project. And I think that it's really interesting to see her explore these avenues, and I think that even if the production isn't consistent, a lot of the songwriting that feels very personal and dealing with her own issues that she's been going through, and her sort of reburgeoning her life through that, comes across incredibly clearly. And I love how it sounds on this project. I was floored at how much I enjoyed this and how much I kept coming back to it, and how much I loved her use of great hook work and her vocal delivery on here just feeling so different and intimate than anything she's done with Paramore. I think this is a great sort of way for her to distance herself in her own personal way without detracting from sounds and ideas that people may have come to know her for in recent years. I think this is great. If you like Hayley Williams, you probably really enjoy this project, and I think that she harnesses some really cool shit here. I'm giving it an 8 out of 10. People don't know what they're taking. What's funny is immediately after I first spun Petals for Armor, they actually played a song from Rina Sawayama's last record, her debut, XS, and I loved her voice. I thought it was so silky smooth, and I was like, wait a minute, this is that artist that just dropped an album. I'll immediately start listening to that. And so I've been spinning these two records in tandem with each other, and man, not only do they complement each other really well because they are both their own sort of infusions of different genre styles under one umbrella that seemingly embodies an aesthetic that works really well, but Rina Sawayama does something completely different on her new record. It's very soulful and smooth and silky, and sees her melding these very indebted to 2000s R&B tracks like Dynasty and Tokyo Love Hotel and Fuck This World Interlude with these jittery, more contemporary twists on that sound, like The Boys, or XS with its chorus of a call and response, to even injecting a little bit of a hard rock metal influence on Shut the Fuck Up, which is a weird diversion in the album, but one that I embrace wholeheartedly. This record is incredible. I love the production on this. Everything is so clean and well put together, and again, Rina Sawayama's voice just soars and melds into these instrumentals like fucking glue. Her voice is so silky and creamy, it hits my ears in this great way. I love this record a lot, and I think it's an incredible release by a very talented vocalist. It's catchy when it wants to be, and has everything I want in a record of its ilk. It's incredibly diverse, it's so well-rounded, and it's produced immaculately. Everything I want in a great pop record with a talented vocalist at the front of it all. I'm giving this a 9 out of 10. It is well worth your time if you're into this sort of stuff, for sure. Used to live inside a lie with you. And now immediately after that, I bounced into the new Charli XCX album, How I'm Feeling Now, which sees the pop singer sort of expanding upon the sound she laid just a year earlier on Charli, which saw her adorning and having this full metamorphosis into a more abstract-centric pop sound that I feel like suited her incredibly well. Charli's always been this powerful voice, and I love that she decided to amp up with a lot more noisier production. And on How I'm Feeling Now, she sort of continues that while also really focusing on the feelings of isolation and pent-up aggression that come with being in quarantine during the year that we've been living in. If there's one pop album that really embodies a lot of feelings one could have in isolation, it's this. It feels very pertinent lyrically with the opener Pink Diamond, which has this stomping instrumental expressing this frustration with being trapped inside when you really just want to be a social butterfly. You really just want to go out and go hard. But I love that that's played up against her also exploring her frustrations that have gone along with her relationship, not just in recent times, like on Forever, where, you know, even if we're not together, I'm going to love you, but 7 Years, which explores that a little more in-depthly, and sort of the hard times that can come with a long-standing relationship, the sort of give and take that comes from it. I really enjoyed this project. I thought that it was a smash. You know, I don't think I like it as much as Charli, but I do appreciate that she had such a quick turnaround on subjects that are very pertinent in the world today. I love that she still retains that noisiness while also putting it up with some more kinetically driven tracks like Detonate, or have these incredibly lush, personal feeling vocal moments like on 7 Years. This record is another tour de force for the pop singer that I thoroughly enjoyed, and I think you will too. If you like Charli, or if you like pop that's a little more experimental, that's a little more indebted to deconstructed bass, like her last record. If you like Charli, her last record, you'll like How I'm Feeling Now. And I think that its lyrics are even more pertinent than on that record. I just don't think it's as broad and as ambitious. It feels more intimate. And I think that's the point. But either way, I'm giving it an 8 out of 10. Another incredible pop record to come out this year.
We must admit that we are losing this battle.
When it comes to the British pop rock band, the 1975, I've never solely bought into their music wholeheartedly. I've always thought their music has been relatively okay, if not a little too lofty, and falls short on its genre dips. You know, I got into them, or at least I first heard their music on their 2016 record, I Like It When You Sleep, and I think that had some decent pop moments, some decent vignettes that it went on. I just think those vignettes didn't really do a whole lot that other bands in the respective genres they were trying don't pull off better. And on the follow-up record, A Brief Inquiry into Online Relationships, they seemingly took that whole foundation and got really pretentious with it. I liked some of the songwriting on that record and thought it was a little better than the songwriting on I Like It When You Sleep, but I thought that it was trying too hard to be something that the band, again, just across the board couldn't quite reach the caliber of. And on Notes on a Conditional Form, their newest record, they continue down that path, but churn out what I would argue is easily their least interesting and their worst record so far as a band. This record starts off on the perfect foot. This record starts off in the best tone setter you could imagine for the record itself, with Greta Thunberg lecturing the listener on climate change for almost 5 minutes. And while I get it, I'm pro-climate change, I know the world in a climate sense could use some help, and I hope that future generations, mine included, continue to try to advocate for the change of being greener. And I would argue, in the sense of the 1975's case, a lot of their fan base falls in the same camp, and it feels wholly unnecessary, and again, super pretentious, only to bleed into the only real energetic track and the most ferocious one the band has put together from what I can understand, People, which is an okay song. It is what it is. You know, I don't mind the aggression that's there. I definitely think that it's kind of a red herring in the track listing, because nothing in the rest of the fucking 80-minute runtime sounds like it, but it's an okay track. And from there on out, you have 4 different types of songs that they sprinkle throughout the track listing with very underwhelming success in sticking the landing. You have these ambient-driven tracks like The End, Music for Cars, or Streaming. You have these alternative country-tinged tracks like The Birthday Party and Roadkill, which I don't think they execute quite as well as other bands in their ilk might. You have these probably the safest bet songs that are these very straightforward pop-centric rock songs like the Me and You Together song, or Tonight I Wish I Was Your Boy. Tonight I Wish I Was Your Boy having this more laid-back feel to it that kind of coats a lot of the same tones that the record's already set. Or you have these UK garage-inspired tracks like Yeah I Know or Frail State of Mind, which, honestly, those are my favorite tracks, because even if It is yet another genre that they've never really attempted before. I think that they handle it decent enough. I don't mind a good kinetic groove if it's pulled together with some decent melodies. I think the songwriting on those songs is the most lazy. Yeah, I know, is one of the most bland songs from a songwriting perspective on the entire record, but it's par for the course for this album as a whole. I don't like this thing. I think that it's very underwhelming. I think that it goes on for far too fucking long. And while you could argue, hey, you can make a redacted out of that, I don't think it's worth it. For all of the boring ambience you could trim a lot out of, you're not left with much else of substance. And it's honestly the least substantive record this band has pulled together across the board, because it's trying to be buried in its own pretentiousness, whether it's song titles that are just overwrought with just, you can smell the potency of Matt Healy being up his own ass. It's a project that I wasn't looking forward to, because I'm already not the biggest fan of this band, but I knew people would wonder my opinions on it, and I don't like it. I'm sorry. I'm giving it a 3 out of 10. I got into Omens through their last record, Reflections of a Floating World, and I liked the sludgier atmospheres mixed with these clean prog vocals and these elongated song passages. And when I heard they were doing a follow-up this year, I was actually very, very excited, because I think that I could use a little more dirty, gritty prog in my life. And what I didn't expect was much more prog than dirty. And on Omens, while there's cool ideas, and I like some of the songs as a whole, like I love the organ intro on the title track that leads really well into the guitars, and it creates this sort of sonic theme for the album. A lot of the songs drag on much longer. The length of the songs on here is felt a lot more on Omens, like on the immediate follow-up, In Procession, which has this very middle-of-the-road production where nothing really feels like it stands out, and the vocals across the board kind of are underwhelming, and on tracks like In Procession, it kind of sticks out like a sore thumb with how middling they really are. I like Halcyon as well. I love the synthetic textures on tracks like Halcyon. I think that they add a nice sonic character to the songs on this project, but I personally just, I'm not feeling it as strong this time around. I don't think the solo work is as flashy. I don't think the guitar tones are as gritty as they were on the last project, and the overall cleaning up of this band's sound I feel like did them a disservice, because one of the things I really liked about them was their combination of progressive musicianship mixed with the sludgier tones that you would hear in a band like Mastodon, but in a much more progressive focused realm in terms of songwriting and song structure. And while they keep the song structures similar, what they're pulling together just isn't as interesting to me around. I'm giving this like a 5 out of 10. It's pretty underwhelming to me personally. Speaking of follow-ups that I've been incredibly excited for, I learned Diet Sig dropped a new record, Do You Wonder About Me, which I loved their last album, Swear I'm Good at This. It was on my honorable mentions of the year that it came out, and they do something similar to what Omens did, but I feel like they didn't stray too far from what I liked about them initially. They do clean up their sound on a handful of tracks like Thriving and Who Are You and Night Terrors, but they keep that rawness there at the right moments, like the intimate Priority Mail, or the absolutely noise-filled Broken Body, or the one moment where it gets super punkish Flash Flood. This record does a great job at balancing those ideas too, because the record itself lyrically has the same personal feel that Swear I'm Good at This had, but it feels like it's an album of growth. The opening track, Thriving, talks about reflecting on someone who was very impactful on your life, and wonder if they wonder about you, but ultimately also not caring because you are thriving. It also seemingly deconstructs a lot of those reflections as well, and talks about how you feel now in the place that you're in, like on Night Terrors, which I love that song, and the fact that it's Reprise, which has this different sort of tonal spin on the song itself as the closer to the project. And the album itself just feels very indebted to growth as a whole lyrically, and I love that about it. And I love a lot of the sounds on here. My biggest wish is that some of these songs were just a little bit longer. Some of these songs fly by way too fast. I liked the intimacy on Priority Mail and really wish it was sort of fleshed out a little more. And I like the song Worth the Wait, but again, I just wish it was elongated just a little bit more. Fleshed out a little more, some of the sonic ideas on it, because it would have made it feel like a more full experience. But as a whole, I really am pleased with this project. I think that if you liked Swear I'm Good at This, you will enjoy a lot of the aspects of this. You may just also find it falls a little short in some departments that you could really want a little more out of it. But ultimately, I'm still sitting with this at a 7 because I think that they did a good job at expanding their sonic palette, expanding on their lyrical palette, and providing some great, catchy moments. They just could have done a little more to make it. They were just shy of like a full experience to me personally.
Drunk more, sleeping too loud.
And the last album I listened to this month was the newest Jeff Rosenstock album, No Dream, which sees the aged punker, I just kicked the camera, which sees the aged punker continuing to pillage forth as an aged punker, but without losing that same quality of songwriting that people have grown to love him for. I enjoyed this project a lot, and I like the songwriting the most out of the entire project. It's the one aspect that I feel like stands tall amongst the crop. I like the songs as themselves. I think they have a good melding of the same power pop sounds that he was toying with on Worry. There's a lot more gnashing punkiness on here as well that feels very indebted to what a lot of modern punk bands are doing, while also not necessarily abandoning things that you would hear bands of the 90s do, which was kind of the cream of the crop he came up in, sonically as well. But I feel like the songwriting, it continues to show why he is still this prolific figure in the genre, where he had the incredible run through Bomb the Music Industry, which is where I got into him from. You know, I like the Arrogant Sons of Bitches, but a buddy of mine showed me Bomb the Music Industry, and I loved the songwriting in that band as well, and the kinetic energy. And I like that there is a sort of bringing back of the energy, because I didn't mind his last record, but I feel like this one feels a lot more energetic and raw than Post did. It feels more in line with Worry sonically, which is the album that I got into him with, his solo work anyway, and which is the album I got into his solo work in, and I like this a lot more. I like that he explores his age and sort of a reaction to being in the scene for so long, like on Nikes, where he kind of talks about being wrapped up in consumerism and how it's sort of a fleeting moment of joy, or Fame, the song itself being sort of a reaction to being in the scene for so long, or Old Crap being in kind of a similar vein. I like how he also has these, again, very indebted to the time that we're in, like on Airbnb, where he kind of writes through the perspective of the people that you could see, whose photos you can see in an Airbnb. And I like the meltdowns in some of these songs. Like this album has a lot more intensity by and large than I even feel like Worry got to, and I like that a lot about it. I love the meltdowns on Leave It in the Sun, or the title track No Dream. I like how on Scram he seemingly lashes out at those that he was supposed to sort of have patience with, and I feel like as, again, a reaction to his age, he's just kind of over that, and I like that about it a lot. I like this project a lot more than his last one, and I think that it's again a great cementing of why he is a great figurehead in modern punk in my eyes. I love this project a lot. I think it's really good. I'm giving it an 8 out of 10. I feel like if you liked Worry, or if you like his Bomb the Music Industry stuff, you'll like this a lot more than you may have liked Post, because it definitely has a lot more sonic characteristics in line with that era of his life, and I feel like he's done a good job at harnessing that again, both instrumentally with a lot of the really rambunctious energy and buoyancy, and the production again feels a little more raw in a great way, and I love this project a lot. I think it's really good. It's bleak, it's sad, it's very much a sad guy record, but it has a lot of the teeth you would expect from someone of this caliber, and I feel like it's very, very good. And that's going to conclude my listening log update for May of 2020. Did you like it? If you did, be sure to give it a like. If you would like to see more of my music, gaming, and genre nerdy content, be sure to subscribe. If you would like to suggest something for me to cover in future listening logs, be sure to let me know any albums in those comments down below, as well as what did you think of the albums I covered today. Special thanks to my patrons. If you would like to join their ranks, linked in the description is my Patreon. You get early access to content, exclusive content, and you help drive the community. I'm going to get out of here. I have been Viral Rack. You guys have videos, lives, and situations, and I'll see you another day.